Welcome, everyone. This is the Village of Riverside regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for Thursday, July 23rd. Time is 7:02. This is our new date and time. We will be meeting on the first and third Thursdays, beginning in June at 7 o'clock. We made this meeting a little bit special so that we didn't have too much business build up on us before the June date arrives. So with that, I would ask Ms. Haley to please call the roll.
Trustee Collins.
Here.
Trustee Gallery.
Here.
Trustee Collins.
Here.
Trustee Foley.
Here.
Village Manager Scalera.
Here.
Village President Sells.
Here.
Village Attorney Mars.
Here.
Village Attorney Molina.
Here.
I have been informed that Trustee Sussman is on her way but is running a few minutes late.
Okay.
So she will be joining us.
And also, just for general information, and I should have actually announced this at the last meeting, Trustee-elect Hamilton has missed the last couple of meetings because she is overseas. She had a month-long trip planned for about a year and a half before she ever decided to run for trustee. So that's why she hasn't been with us the last couple of meetings. She's back at the end of the month, and she will be with us at our June 6th meeting. So I would now ask us to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for being here that's in our audience tonight. And for those watching at home, visitors and residents are welcome to speak at any time during our meeting. I just ask that you be recognized by me and make your comments from the podium so that everyone at home can hear you. This meeting is being broadcast live by Channel 6. You can also see past meetings online at the Village website, or you can also find CDs or DVDs of past meetings at the library if you would like to watch them at home. So our first item of business tonight is public comment, and I believe we have some folks here that would like to address the board. Amy?
Thank you. I'm Amy Jaksic, 340 Olmsted Road. I'm here on behalf of the Riverside Farmers Market Committee to invite everyone to our first market of the season on June 5th from 2:30 to 7 p.m. And we'll continue to run on Wednesdays throughout the season until October 2nd. This is our 5th year as a market, and we continue to be the fastest growing market in the western suburbs. While other markets in our area are struggling to add new vendors or even remain in business, we have experienced tremendous growth each year. Our first year we had about 6 or 7 vendors, and this year we're on schedule to have about 30 of them. As a market, we have 3 major goals: to make healthful, fresh, locally grown produce more readily available right here in our community, in addition to all of the great items available to us at Riverside Foods. Bring people to our village center, including those from outside of Riverside. And this is our first year where we are actively recruiting shoppers from outside of the village through advertising and using social media. And I know that we're getting people from Berwyn, North Riverside. Someone from McCook today contacted me that's a regular shopper. So we're trying to reach out beyond the village to get people to discover our businesses, our downtown area. And our third is create a sense of community among shoppers and vendors who attend the Wednesday markets. We survey our shoppers each year to try to improve upon the previous year's market. I think we continue to be successful because we listen to you and we build our market each year around your responses. We've been working since January to provide you with what you have asked for. So we start planning probably, the market always ends in October and plans start actually in December. So we've been working nonstop since January to prepare for this season. We offer wonderful programming each week thanks to our partnership with the Riverside Public Library, which is a very strong partnership. We provide both a business and community table so that area businesses and community organizations can share their information with our community. And we would like to encourage the trustees to possibly consider hosting a community table maybe once or twice this season as a means to interact with residents. We have a small group of very committed volunteers determined to continue to bring this market to the community for as long as you are willing to support it and patronize our vendors. So we exist because people shop the market. If you don't shop it, we won't be around much longer. But to date, we've had some really strong support from residents and neighboring communities. As you know, the recent CMAP study recommended that the village board support the farmers market, and I want to thank Jean and President Sells and Joe. I see you guys there every week, so thank you for your support. And we hope that the new board members see the value in having a thriving farmers market and will continue to support us as well. We can always use more volunteers. If you're interested in helping out, please contact Kathy Haley, who is an integral part of the committee as well, in the village office. We welcome input from you about how we were doing. You can find Riverside Farmers Market committee members wearing one of these green shirts at the market. You can seek us out at our new information booth, which will be new this year. We will have an information booth where you'll always be able to find a committee member. Email us at riverside-farmers-market@googlegroups.com or check us out on Facebook by searching for Riverside Farmers Market. And we hope to see you on June 5th, which is our launch date this year. Thank you for your support. And now we have, thank you. Oh, hi. Thank you, Jean. I'm not sure if you walked in before, but we really appreciate your support of the market. And Jean is actually a market manager. I don't know if anybody knows that, but she served that role last season, so we're really grateful.
So, Amy, before you...
I'm sorry.
Welcome. Before you introduce Kate, do you
Yes.
want to run through who the members of your committee are?
Sure. We've got actually Kate Coffey. Jean is an honorary member. She serves as a market manager. Kathy Haley is integral. So Kathy is not only a village resident, a village employee, but also a member of the Farmers Market Committee. Sue Pipel, Mark Shevitz, my husband, Paige Fumo-Fox, and who else am I forgetting? Helen Gallagher, Andrea Cruz, Kathy Alexander, and we've got a couple new ones this year. But that's been kind of the core since the beginning there, and we've actually added some new volunteers this year, so we're grateful for that. We need the extra hands. It's getting quite big. And Kate, would you like to come up and say a few words? Kate is not only a Riverside resident, she's a Riverside business owner, and she's a member of the Farmers Market Committee, and
I'm extraordinary.
a vendor at the market.
I'm Kate Coffey. Do I have to give my address? 220 East Burlington Street. If you want to come over and mow the lawn, anyone's welcome. You get chocolate, you get caramels. I own Chocolate Twist, which is a small batch, handcrafted confection company here in Riverside. We don't have a storefront. We have a commercial kitchen space here in Riverside. I'm a Riverside resident. I am on the Farmers Market Committee. I've been a vendor at the Farmers Market. This is my third year. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what it's like to be not only a resident of Riverside and the impact that it's had on me as a resident, the Farmers Market has had on me as a resident, but also what it's done for my company, which is a micro company. You know, we're trying to build it to a small company. Right now it's a micro company. What I think the Farmers Market has done is it's allowed me as a vendor to expand my base. And what's great about Riverside, which I think is true in many communities, but because Riverside is so small and so intimate and so tight-knit, what I think is so great about it is that the residents really support the local push and the local vendors. Even if that means a Riverside vendor, like Chocolate Twist, like Riverside Foods, like the church that does the gardening, Ascension Church. Riversiders seem to band together and really support the local folks, whether it's a Riverside resident or if it's local in terms of they come from our community, our outskirt communities, our farmers. What it does is it brings people together, the farmers market. It brings people who have means and people who don't have means. People who work all day or people who are home with their children, working at home with their children all day. It brings together all the races that we have in our community, and I think that it's just a bonding experience for people when they come. And for me as a business owner, it's just a wonderful way for me to reach out on a very human, very personal level with people. So as a community member and as a business owner in this community, I have found it to be invaluable for me. I love the feedback, and I feel like I'm part of something that's not just my little world. I feel like I'm part of something bigger in this community, and then ultimately it grows out from there. So I'm proud to be a Riversider, but I'm also very proud to be a member of the farmers market on a couple different levels. So we'd love to see you all at the farmers market this summer. Stop by the chocolate twist tent for some samples. And I probably can't give anything for free, right? But you can buy stuff from me. Only if you mow my lawn. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And Amy, thank you, and please, I know I speak for all the trustees, how much we appreciate what you and the committee do. This is a wonderful addition to our community, and I look forward to it every spring, and I miss it in the fall when it goes away.
We're very unique in that most of the area farmers markets are usually run by their Chamber of Commerce, or maybe the village runs it, but we're completely volunteer run with the support of the village. And I'm really proud at how strong of a following we have. So
that's great. So Wednesdays, 2:30.
Wednesdays, 2:30
between
to 7.
the Township Hall and the library.
And the Riverside Public Library. And one new thing we're doing this year is we have Cantata, or formerly the British Home, bringing their residents over as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so they'll be there to enjoy the market and experience our public library, and it'll change the demographic a little bit of.
Well, I join you in encouraging all of our residents to come out and give it a try. It's
Wonderful.
Thank
you. We appreciate the support of all you guys. So thanks for being there every week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board? If not, we'll move on to reports of village officers. First on the list is my report. I have a few things that I'd like to talk about tonight. The first is the announcement of the liaison assignments for our trustees. These assignments have already been noted to the various commission chairs, but this is for public information. Trustee Ballerine will be the liaison to Parks and Recreation. Trustee Sussman will be liaison to the Safe Environment Commission. Mr. Foley will do Historical. Trustee-elect Hamilton will be the liaison to the Landscape Advisory Commission. Ms. Collins will be the Preservation Commission liaison, and Mr. Pollack will do double duty as the Plan and the Zoning Board of Appeals liaison. So I appreciate their service in that regard. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is something that's already ongoing. The CMAP report, when it was adopted by the board, one of the first things it talked about as being something important we needed to do was to start to streamline our regulatory review process with regard to our commissions. So in that regard, after we were all sworn in, I notified the various commissions that I was going to be attending their meetings in the month of May. And I'm asking them to do a comprehensive review of their establishing ordinance with regard to their powers and duties, with regard to more efficient ways of organizing the commissions, with regard to the number of commissioners, the terms of commissioners. If you look at our commission structure now, it's rather a hodgepodge. You know, some commissions have 5, some have 7, some have 9, some have 3-year terms, some have 5-year terms, some have 4-year terms. So we're looking at trying to standardize and make more efficient our commission review process. So that process is already underway. As part of that, I just gave you the liaisons for the various commissions. I'm going to remain, I was the trustee liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, and to try to emphasize the importance of revitalizing our business districts, I'm going to remain as liaison to the Chamber of Commerce. And Mr. Scalera, our village manager, is going to be the liaison for the Economic Development Commission. The hope there is that by having a nexus between the Economic Development Commission, our staff, the village board, and our Chamber of Commerce, we're going to have the relevant people in place that we need to really start to get our business district moving. And I just wanted to show you a couple things that I hope you've seen in the last few weeks. an example of what this kind of cooperation can do in terms of revitalizing our businesses. If you have a chance to look at the CMAP report, there are two things in there that really will jump out at you, or at least they jumped out at me. The first was that when prospective businesses come to look at a village or a town to move into, the most important thing to them, even more important than the potential of having economic incentives, is a business-friendly environment. That is what they're looking for. They want an environment that is welcoming and supportive of businesses. And one of the best ways they know that they're looking at an environment that is welcoming and supportive of businesses is that the existing businesses are welcomed and supported. I mean, Ms. Coffey just made a great plea for the whole idea of shopping local, because we have a village staff that's dedicated to revitalizing our business district. We have a village board that's dedicated to it. But it cannot happen without the support of our residents. And I hope you received these. 3 of our local businesses, the Choo Choo, the Riverside Tap Room, and Riverside Foods, have started putting out joint flyers that they're sending out to residents. This is one that you probably got a week or 2 ago that actually has coupons for the various businesses. And this is an example of what we can do when we start working together. They also have joined together for the Riverside Craft Beer Week. And you have the opportunity to go around to the various businesses, and you get little stars as you have a beer or you buy a beer somewhere. And if you get enough stars, you get a T-shirt. And I already have a T-shirt. So I encourage you to make this pay off for them. You know, they're reaching out to us. We have to reach out to them. And their logo says it all. Keep it local, and we all win. So this is the process that's already underway.
Did it take you a long time to get your shirt then? Or?
I just assume not answer that question.
Yeah, that's what you're
Yeah. I'm working on a case. That's right. The next thing I wanted to mention is on June 20th, which is our second meeting in June, we will be having our discussion of a visioning meeting concerning the implementation of the CMAP proposals. We have adopted the CMAP plan in theory, and now we are going to actually start the hard work of looking at prioritizing the action items that we want to start to tackle and moving forward on them. So I encourage residents who are interested in this process to either tune in, or if you'd like to come and contribute, June 20th is going to be that opportunity. I'm going to ask a little bit later, I'm going to ask Trustee Sussman to talk about RAW, so I'll let you wait for that. But the last thing I just wanted to mention is this weekend and Monday coming up is Memorial Day. And I would encourage everyone to come out on Monday at 10 a.m. for our Memorial Day remembrance. And of special significance at that event will be an honoring of our resident, Don Farnham, who was a veteran who actually served in one small part of his service at Iwo Jima. And if you haven't had a chance, in this week's Landmark, there's a wonderful story about Mr. Farnham. It's an exceptional story about an exceptional man. And so I hope you'll take a look at this, learn a little bit more about Mr. Farnham, and if you can join us at 10 o'clock at the Memorial Circle on Monday, it would be great to see everyone there for the remembrance. And that is all I have. Mr. Scalera?
Thank you, President Sells. I only have 3 items as part of my report this evening. The first is I'm happy to announce that the masonry work at the train station is complete and staff is pleased with the final product. Staff is also working on our resubmittal application to the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program for the replacement of the roof. The application deadline is August 3rd, with awardees being notified in the early fall. As a follow-up to the April storm event, staff has met to discuss what worked as well as what we need to improve on in the event, hopefully, knock on wood, we don't get it, another event similar to the one that we experienced this past April. I did want to let the community know that FEMA has declared the event a disaster, and so residents who were affected by the the storm event may call or go online to register for disaster assistance. The 1-800 number for FEMA is 1-800-621-3362, or the website address is www.disasterassistance.gov, or if you like, you can connect to the village website, which will direct you to the FEMA website, and you can submit your application. And then finally, I wanted to thank Trustee Sussman and the entire Riverside Arts Weekend Committee for another great Raw weekend. The change in location, I felt, enhanced the experience of being surrounded by the various types of art and made it much more attractive to the individuals coming from all over the Chicagoland area to participate in the event. So thank you, Trustee Sussman, for her leadership and all the hard work that she did. That is all I have.
Thank you, Peter. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that any trustee needs to have removed for discussion? I would just like to have a special note in addition to the various minutes that are listed. We are on the consent agenda tonight is a motion to approve the special event application for the Memorial Day celebration or ceremony on May 27th in Guthrie Park, the special event application for the farmers market that we just talked about, a special event application for the cruise nights and car shows sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce that this year will be on June 13th, July 11th, August 8th, and September 29th. A special event application for the annual Riverside Chamber of Commerce Steak Fry, which is held on East Avenue on Friday, June 21st. And also the second reading of an ordinance amending the village code with regard to fuel price signs. So with that, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Foley and second by Ms. Collins. Any discussion? Ms. Haley, if you'll call the roll.
Trustee Sussman?
Aye.
Trustee Pollak?
Aye.
Trustee Gowan?
Aye.
Trustee Collins?
Aye.
Trustee Foley?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is reports of departments and commissions, and the first item is a Finance Department report, which is a motion for the Village of Riverside to accept the comprehensive annual financial report. Mr. Scalera, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. This item that you have before you is a motion for the Village of Riverside to accept the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended December 31, 2012. According to state statute, the Village of Riverside is required to have an annual audit conducted by an independent audit firm. After a request for proposal process, the village board entered into a 5-year contract with the firm Lauterbach and Amon on October 15, 2013 for annual auditing services. The Village of Riverside has completed its annual report audit, participated in the audit process, and has received an unqualified or clean opinion of its general purpose financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2012. With us this evening is Jamie Wilkie, partner of Lauterbach and Amon, who will provide an overview of the CAFR for the village board.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. I know Jessica's not here. Obviously, we all know she's home tending to that new baby. I think I got an email from her the night before she went into the hospital, so she was quite dedicated to getting this done prior to maternity leave. So certainly I want to thank her. Obviously, first-year audit takes some extra time, especially being 9 months pregnant, so we do appreciate all of her hard work, Marco's hard work, and the rest of the department staff. Before you will find a copy of the audit. I believe they were all distributed ahead of time. I'll briefly cover a few topics, and if there's any specific questions, we can certainly address those, or as you review the audit, you can certainly pass along emails or phone calls. Jessica has all of our contact information as well. Peter did mention the unqualified opinion. You will find that on page 2 of the audit. I'll give a couple of page number references as we go, so if you have the bound document in front of you, that might be helpful. And we're looking at actual page 2. There's some Roman numeral pages at the front there. So if you can flip back just a bit, it should be on our letterhead. And page 2 at the very top, there's a paragraph there labeled opinions. Again, this is reference to Peter's unqualified opinion that we did issue to the village for the year ended December 31st of 2012. That does mean that the financial statements are free of any material misstatement, and you'll find that reference there within that first paragraph. Immediately after the audit opinion, you should see a divider labeled management discussion and analysis. There'll be about 15 pages after that divider page. This was actually prepared by staff. What it is really what I consider to be the Cliff Notes version to the audit. If you don't have a chance to read every page, I know it's a large document, I would encourage you to spend some time with these 15 pages. Jessica's really highlighted some of the key changes for the year, increases and decreases in operating revenues and expenditures, capital asset activity, outstanding debt activity. So some of the major transactions that really flowed into the financial statements for the year, she's really done a nice highlight of what those key items are. So again, I would encourage you to read that section. I want to point out one financial statement just to highlight the numbers for the year. And that would be on pages 10 and 11, and these would be actual pages 10 and 11, so if you can flip back just a little ways after that management discussion and analysis section. You'll see the income statement for your governmental operating funds, in particular your general fund, debt service, capital projects, and then what we call our non-major funds or our smaller operating funds. The far right column will give your totals for the year. The third line up from the bottom there is basically net change in fund balance for the year. So the village did end with a positive increase in fund balance of just over $500,000. Again, we're still working towards kind of recouping some of those losses from prior economic recession issues. What we have seen across the board with most of our municipalities is I think most boards were good at cost control, and then we had some state revenues that came in slightly higher than what was originally anticipated, which is exactly what happened here as well. So you'll see the general fund did increase $420,000 this year. Again, a positive sign that hopefully the economy is back on track. The last page that I want to point out is actually the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund, so you guys could see kind of where you thought we were going to be and where we ended for the year. That's on page 56. On page 56, you'll see the final budget actually was anticipating about a $100,000 loss for the year. In that second column there from the left is that final budget number. Again, net bottom line of $100,000 loss. And we did end the year with a positive $420,000. Again, you'll see revenues were slightly higher than what was anticipated for the year, and there was some good cost controlling measures throughout the year that helped increase that fund balance. Any questions on the general fund or any numbers? I didn't want to go into too many specifics. Yes?
I just want to say something in general to my fellow trustees. We always spend a lot of time on the budget, and we really don't spend very much time on the CAFR. And I think it's very, if not more important, to spend time in the CAFR. And I don't know if people have questions. Jamie said she was available.
Absolutely.
Jessica, but I'd like to encourage people to look at it, and we've never really talked about it, and I want to explain why. It's because if you look in the CAFR there, the CAFR gives us two, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, I'm sure.
That's okay.
CAFR gives us really two ways of looking at our financial situation. One way is to look at the way we traditionally look at it with a budget, and the budget's just a snapshot. It's a moment in time, and it's only a financial way of, a dollar way of looking at the budget, right? It looks at the financial situation. It looks at revenues, and it looks at expenditures, and it looks at the major funds. And we look at the major funds primarily to comply with the law. There are legal reasons why we have a government fund, why we have the enterprise funds, the sewer funds, those kinds of things, Pat. And that, again, is a snapshot in time, and we spend a lot of time talking about that. But in some ways, what Jamie was talking about, sort of the government-wide financial statement, is even more important because that is the equivalent of a financial accounting statement. Doug, you would know this. It tells us not just what our revenues and our expenditures are, but it tells us the total value of our assets. So if you think about the way we do the budget, it never talks about the total debt that we have. It never talks about the value of the property we have or the value of the capital items we have. It doesn't tell us how much we're worth or how much that net worth changes over time. So it only gives us a small sense of where we're going as a community. It just tells us, are we adding to the money we have or not? It doesn't tell us if we're adding to the true value of the village. Whereas what's in the CAFR, and it's the only time we see it during the year, is this financial accounting system that tells us what's our net worth. So we know, for instance, from what Jamie just said and what we do with the budget, that we came in about $500,000 over what our budget was supposed to be. But our budget doesn't tell us what happened to our net worth. And if you look at this, this actually tells us that our net worth increased between 2011, I'm getting the dates wrong,
Nope, you're okay.
2011 and 2012.
Right.
And the reason that our net worth increased is because we put in, it's not because of the money we have, it's because we put in the new green parking lot, and that green parking lot is worth about $333,000. At the same time, we depreciated more money in 2012 than we did in 2011, so our net worth actually went up. But we don't, it could have been the opposite. We could have sold a building and done something with that money such that it didn't end up in our budget. And we would never have known what we're doing to the village overall. And so I would just, I know it sounds preachy and I'm sorry, but it's not just about the fact that we've changed over the board, it's the old board also. We've never really talked about these things, and I think there's a huge value to understanding. Ben, you talk frequently, Mr. President, about leaving a legacy for future generations. The legacy isn't just what the bottom line is, our reserves. The legacy in part is what we're worth as a village in terms of assets, all of our assets. And I just think we should look at that and ask questions about that.
Certainly.
I can't promise that's my only speech for the night, but right now it is.
It's still early.
Richard, why are you laughing?
Gene, at what point in the year did they begin on the camper?
Do they begin what, Mike?
What time of the year, or how far back do they begin preparing this document?
This document?
In January.
Yeah.
The CAFR?
It's almost 6 months from start to finish.
Because
Okay.
they need to
I
wait
just
to the
wanted to know.
close.
Yeah.
They need to wait to the, because it does involve how the budget worked, you have to wait until the actual close and any
Right.
kind of reconciliation, which
Right.
goes on at least into the first quarter of the year.
Right. We start actually our planning meetings in December.
Okay.
And then, so we're almost exactly 6 months from start to finish, the entire process.
But again, when we get to the budget, we won't talk about the value of our land or the value of our buildings, or you'll see that the value of our capital equipment went down. Well, we know that because we know we're not investing in that on the same schedule that we had in the past. And so those kinds of things, I think, are just items we should talk about occasionally.
I agree.
To your point, there was one more section I just wanted to point out in the audit itself. It's actually the last section that begins on page 83. We call this the statistical section. In conjunction with that management letter, which will kind of highlight the key items for the year, what the statistical section does is really give you 10-year trend information. So when we talk about net worth, page 83 and 84 is a perfect snapshot of that idea of net worth. Net worth is what we in the accounting world call net position now, because GASB tells us that's what we have to call it. And if you look at the bottom line, we have all of the information from the point in time in which we were required to pick up fixed assets and long-term debt on your financial statements in what we call our entity-wide statements. If you look at the very bottom line, this includes all funds of the village, all capital activity, all outstanding debt, and tells us what is that net worth number, which has gone up from $32 million in 2004 to $39 million in 2012. And you'll see it slightly increased, except for that 2004 to 2005 year, every year going forward. So again, a good indicator of assets are being added, debt is being retired. You may have some fund balances that have increased or decreased over time, but in theory, that net worth has increased slightly each year. Okay. There's some other financial type schedules immediately after this. The statistical section also has property tax related schedules. You'll find some demographic information, operating indicators, which I always think are a nice place for the board to look at, you know, how many building permits were issued and those types of things over the last 10 years. And capital asset statistics. So you'll have some idea of, you know, miles of road and sanitary sewer line, you know, distance, and some of those types of indicators would all be within this statistical section here. And hopefully that will shed some light on some of your points as well. Any questions specifically?
Ms. Wilkie, thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And please thank Jessica when she returns.
I will.
Hopefully she's not checking email, I told her that. So. She is though, I know.
And Trustee Sussman, I really appreciate what you said. And the only thing that I would add to it, at one point Ms. Wilkie talked about the importance of cost control measures, and this is cost control measures, number one, right here. The reason we have these kind of surpluses is because of the hard work and the frugality of our staff that have consistently done more and more with less and less over time. So Peter, thank you for that. And I'm also embarrassed that Ms. Wilkie reminded me of some, you know, we're all such a family around here. I forget that not everyone knows everything that happens in these offices. But the baby that was referred to is Jessica and Bill Francis's new baby boy, Charles William Francis, which was born, what, like about 2 weeks ago? Yeah. 2 weeks ago. So congratulations to Jessica and Bill on their new arrival. Next up is a report by our Public Works Department.
Motion to accept.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Sussman, second by Trustee Ballerine. Any discussion? Ms. Haley?
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Ballerine.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is a report by our Public Works Department. Mr. Bailey.
Good evening. You've been presented with what's a fairly routine bid award recommendation to award sidewalk replacement bid tonight to Globe Industries. What makes this particular bid different is this year 6 surrounding communities have combined their sidewalk quantities, bid them all together, and what you can see here is you know, the bid tabulation from all of those communities. Back in 2012, I became aware that some northern suburban communities had banded together to do joint purchasing, such as this, various items that communities do purchase. I made contact and with a community member, staff member from one of those communities, obtained some information and contacted directors of public works from surrounding communities here to determine whether or not they'd be interested in participating in joint purchasing. And I was happy to find out that they all expressed an interest. Ultimately, 6 of us agreed to combine our sidewalk quantities together, kind of a trial run, get started, see where this goes. And we did bid the projects out all together, and the results for Riverside were actually quite favorable, because for like a 5-inch thick sidewalk, you know, they're 5-inch squares, so it's 25 square feet. The square foot cost for exposed aggregate 5-inch sidewalk is $7 per square foot. Last year when we bid it out individually, just Riverside bidding out its own quantities, the per square foot was $7.50. So that represents about a $12.50 reduction in the cost of replacing a sidewalk square. And that's what this is all about. We only had 2 bidders. We would have expected more bidders, because that's really what you want to do, or trying to do when you combine these quantities, attract more and larger contractors. But certainly from the standpoint of lower prices, in Riverside's case, we did achieve lower prices. I'm not so sure how the other communities fared. but they are individually awarding their bids. Western Springs awarded, I think Tuesday night of this week, they awarded their bid. With this $35,000 amount, we would expect to do about 200 squares of sidewalk replacement. Last year with the program, we did 169 squares. We did more things with the sidewalk program than I'm planning to do this year. This is exclusively sidewalk. Other years, we've replaced curb and gutter. That's very expensive to replace. It's, you can see in the bid prices here, it's upwards of $25 a lineal foot. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, like I say, we're presenting this bid to you with recommendation that it be awarded to Globe.
So the recommendation here is for approval of a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a contract with Globe Construction in the amount of $35,650 for the 2012 sidewalk replacement program. I would ask for a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Foley, second by Ms. Sussman. Any discussion or questions?
I have one question. You know, it's always been discussed that we have exposed aggregate, and exposed aggregate is more expensive. We had a debate about how we can make it less, and blah 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 blah. And I look at this bid, and it looks like Riverside is saving the most out of all of these communities, because it's gone down from $12 to $7, where the other communities are paying $8 for the same squares. So I don't want to be arguing about saving money, but it looks like we're at $7 a square foot versus Village of LaGrange or Village of LaGrange Park, Village of Countryside, which is $8 a square foot, and they're using regular concrete. I thought exposed aggregate was more labor intensive, was a 15% upcharge.
Typically it has been, and we are different than any of these other communities that participated in this. But the specifications are in the bid documents for them to bid on. I have to accept that their cost for this is $7 per square foot.
So they're, do they know what they're, I mean, has anybody used them? Has anybody given us any recommendations?
Yeah, we did a fairly extensive amount of background checks on them with other communities that have done work with Globe, and they came back satisfactory. Like most contractors, there'll be some ups and downs. Some communities have some bad experiences with some contractors sometime. But we contacted a number of communities, and collectively other participating directors of public works, and I decided that it was appropriate to award this contract to this company. And again, you're right, these other communities may not have fared as well as Riverside, but you send the bids out and give them the specifications, and that's all you can do. And that's their job to provide the accurate price for the product.
And is this just sidewalk, or is there any curb, gutter?
No, I didn't put any curb or gutter. That's about the only other thing we do with this sidewalk program is curb and gutter. And it's just smaller sections, nothing too dramatic. It is very expensive to replace it. So this year, and especially since it was this combining quantities, I was kind of conservative because I didn't necessarily know where it would go, how it would work out. And in fact, I'm expecting that I will hopefully be able to add more sidewalk to the bid price, with their quantities. Because we'll have extra money in the capital budget. I have been doing roughly $9,000 worth of sidewalk saw cutting to remove defects, much more economical than sidewalk replacement. I intend to do that, which from a $50,000 capital budget leaves $41,000. You can see that this bid is $35,000. and that would leave about 5,000 to do some more sidewalk squares if the contractor's willing to do that. They typically are.
Is there a way for us to combine any of the other improvements, i.e. Sealing cracks and curb gutter, with other villages?
That's what I'm hoping. This is a trial run. We're just starting out, didn't necessarily know how it would go, but that would be the ideal. That's the whole point here, is you combine all of the common products that you can. You have to do, sometimes you have to do a, kind of have to synthesize your specifications a bit, but they typically are based on IDOT specifications to a large extent anyway, so there is a kind of a base specification we're working with. But I'm certainly hopeful that these villages, and there's other ones that have expressed interest in this combined purchasing that didn't participate in the sidewalk program. And crack sealing is one. Actually, it's a good example of something I'm very interested in combining with another community. Not every community does it. Very few of these communities actually do it. But our quantities are small, and we haven't been attracting more than 1 or 2 bidders lately. And hopefully the way we can do that is to combine our quantities with somebody else.
I just want to thank you for initiating this project and trying to lower our costs. This is great that you took the effort and did this. Thank you.
I think it's you know, it's one of those things that make a lot of sense. It's, you know, like a no-brainer almost, but I hope that these other participating communities continue to participate, because that, you know, you really have to, you know, get used to doing it and get a good feel for it, and kind of smooth some of the process out. And it's different, you know, it's changed. So hopefully this project will go well, and then we'll be able to build on it.
Anything else? Well, I second what Trustee Collins says. Thank you for your initiative in doing this. This is exactly the kind of thing that I'm delighted to see Riverside taking the lead in. So I commend you and your department for doing this.
You're welcome.
With that, if you'll please call the roll on this motion.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Next up is considerations, and before we get to the discussion item, I was wondering if Trustee Sussman, could I call upon you just to talk a little bit about the great success that we had with RAW?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I'd like to just start by saying it was a beautiful weekend. The weather cooperated. The park, Mr. Bailey just left, but thanks to Public Works, the park was just glorious looking. And I think people had a very good time. I certainly had a good time, if that's any measure. We had over 65 juried artists. We had musical professional musicians both days. We had a community art project. We had Red Moon Theater, which was a spectacle. That's their word, not my word, but it was a spectacle. We had a number of other activities, and there was a lot going on, a lot of appreciation of the arts, a lot of residents, and a lot of people from outside the village who came. So thank you. I'd like to take a moment to just go on air and thank all the many volunteers. To start off with, just to make the weekend itself a success, we filled 43 2- to 3-hour slots with volunteers. That's a lot of people. And Kathy Haley, who's over there, Robin Mooney, who represented, well, RK Jewelers and the Chamber, Joe, Trustee Ballerine, President Sells. Peter Scalera was out there for a very long time using his bronze and his brains. People were out there working very hard. I do want to mention very quickly, with your permission, the committee, because I haven't had a chance to do this on air. So I mentioned Kathy Haley and Peter Scalera and Robin Mooney, who's hiding over there in a corner. But in addition, Jane Archer, Aberdeen Ozga, Glenn Geisler, Barb Sistick-Bauer, Allison Scanlon, Jill Mateo, Rebecca White, and Sue Pipel. All these people came to innumerable meetings, and each had his or her particular niche, which was executed just beautifully for those of you who were there. So I want to thank everybody. I also want to thank our key sponsors. Klein, Thorpe, and Jenkins, represented by our lawyers here, thank you very much. We were able to actually have professional musicians because of a special grant from the BNSF, so that was lovely. The zoo sponsors us this year, every year. The village, obviously, the township, always a special thanks to the chamber for a variety of reasons, for staffing and for monetary contributions. So I want to thank everybody for that. And I hope that people will continue to volunteer for RAW 2014. Thank you.
You know,
and Ben, thanks for your talk.
The other thing that you don't, that I don't know if I'm sure you realize, but as I walked around, I went into a couple businesses. They were jammed.
Good.
I mean, there was a lot of people in town. When we did our 2-hour stench at the little thing, there was people from Oak Park, Forest Park, all over, and you know, things like RAW, things like the cruise nights, all this stuff brings more and more people in Riverside that, and it's a mushroom that keeps growing.
And
So.
actually, many of our donors came from outside the village. We had donors from the Oak Park Visitors Bureau. We had the Art Stop in LaGrange. We had the Oak Park River Forest Symphony. Mr. Molina, I don't know if you know that, but they donated season tickets actually to the raffle. President Sells, thank you very much for the sailboat donation. That was great. The Higgins glass always. So, and actually, Bob, Mr. Uphues is here from the Landmark, and for his articles and his photographs this week. They weren't yours, but I know you had something to do with them. Thank you very much.
It really was glorious. I mean, it just gets better every year, and I was knocked out this year. And you know, the two things that it really brought to me. I mean, your committee did an extraordinary job, and I know how hard and long you guys worked.
Well, they worked very hard.
But you know, I liked that it really accentuates Riverside's really essential connection to the arts. I mean, we live in a living creation of art. And so to have something like this in one of our parks, especially like Trustee Valerie said, was really a special thing. And I was also delighted to see the creative use of Guthrie Park. It gives some idea of what an asset that particular piece of green space is with its proximity to the train station. And I think it bodes well for future projects of various kinds in that park.
I think so too. And I have to say, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the other departments. I know this is a lot. I mentioned Kathy and Peter, but we couldn't have done it without Public Works. They really took the initiative in keeping the park beautiful and picked up, and also Kathy? I know I was going to mention police, and various parts of the police. Not only did our officers come and enjoy the music and talk to people and help with not crowd control, I shouldn't say that, with traffic, but we had the police auxiliary there, an officer every day, and we had the explorers there, and they were great. They spent 2 full days directing traffic, sometimes literally daring cars to stop. I don't know if they should be doing that or not, but they were. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank them publicly.
It was a community effort, and it was a community success.
Yeah.
And I bought this pen.
That's great.
Among other things, actually, I went over my budget. So thank you very much. On to now more mundane affairs, is a consideration, a review and a discussion of special use designations. And just first as a little background to this, in our business districts, and this kind of ties in with the earlier comments I made about us trying to find ways to revitalize and encourage our businesses. Within our business districts, there are permitted uses and special uses. And I'm going to ask our village attorney, Mr. Molina, if he can just talk a little bit about what that means and what our current process is for having special use designations as a prelude to our conversation. Mr. Molina?
Sure. The distinction between a permitted use and a special use is those are zoning terms, where in the various districts that are created, a municipality can select the uses that are appropriate to a given district. And if they're allowed, they're called permitted, and all one has to do when you apply to build, say, a structure is to make sure that it conforms with the district's rules and regulations, and if it does, staff can issue a permit because it's permitted as a use as long as it meets the standards, the building standards, let's say, or the use standards. If it's a specific kind of activity, for example, and it's a permitted type activity, you might need a license for it, for example, or not, and then staff could issue that license because you meet the criteria. Special uses are different in that they are not permitted as of right, although conceptually the community, through its zoning laws, has decided that it may be allowed, but needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Usually special uses are activities, let's say in a residential district, they might be certain kinds of non-residential uses, but that could be consistent with the general residential character, but would require, in the community's opinion or thinking, a case-by-case approach to allowing that specific kind of use. Maybe a public kind of use, a school, that gets tricky because you have intergovernmental issues, but nonetheless an institutional use which could be consistent, or religious uses, for example, churches and so forth in a residential, where you might want to look at them. So special uses are those uses which need to be looked at in a given district on a case-by-case basis before they can be allowed. And what that means to an applicant is, if a use that you want to have is a special use in a given district and you want to go there, you need to go through a special process to get special permission in order to have that use. And under state law, because you're a non-home rule municipality, you have to follow the state zoning regulations. That requires an application for the special use. It requires that a public hearing be held, and before the public hearing can be held, publication and notice has to be given to the community by a specific process. And for a given amount of time, a public hearing needs to be held where the community can come and ask questions of the applicant under a fairly formal kind of process that's similar to a sort of a more relaxed court-type proceeding. And then you need to have a recommendation from the Plan Commission. That recommendation then has to come before this board, and under your current rules, that would have to be approved by ordinance because it becomes part of your zoning code, and so you would need to have 2 readings of that ordinance. And so it's a fairly involved proceeding from start to finish that could take upwards of 4 months, or unless there's some delays, it could be longer. So
Nothing takes 4 months.
So, well, actually, Michael and I were talking about what the appropriate number of months might be. It does vary because sometimes you have continuances or whatever, but if you're going along at a pretty good clip, that's probably about right.
And just to that point, Trustee Ballerine, I mean, if everything goes exactly, I mean, if you read the ordinance, once the application is submitted, the Plan Commission has 60 days to have the hearing. After the hearing, they have 60 days to report to us. After us, it takes 2 meetings
to read it,
to approve it. So if everything goes smoothly, we're talking 5 months, and it's $1,000. So what brought this to my attention were 2 items in particular. In the public use zone, in the B2, which is probably the best way to think of it as where Molly's is and where the tap room and that corner there. Just 2 items that struck me is that a restaurant with an outdoor cafe, so outdoor eating, like Molly's has now, would be a special use. And the one that really hit me was a retail sales establishment, a store. It seems to me that we're not doing the best we can to encourage business if a store is told they have to wait 5 months and pay $1,000. So this is not a determination for us, but what I would like the trustees to discuss is the possibility of asking our Plan Commission to go through and review this table of the permitted and special uses to see if there are things that we need to take a second look at and perhaps change to make a more business-friendly environment. So that is what I'd like to open for discussion. Or we can just recommend it.
Let's just recommend it.
Is there consensus?
Yes.
I would like to ask that the Plan Commission and the village attorney also look specifically at, you mentioned outdoor seating areas. look at specifically the distinction between outdoor dining areas located on private property versus public right-of-way. I think whether, for example, whether or not outdoor patio located on public property, public right-of-way, is even subject to zoning regulations, or whether it should be subject to zoning regulations, rather than just simply a business license or something like that. That's another distinction I'd like to look at.
Yeah. So if it was a restaurant that had a backyard, let's say, and they had a beer garden back there, totally on private property,
Right.
what regulations?
To me, that's a different animal than chairs on the
Out on the right-of-way.
on the sidewalk. And I think too, and this is something that you'll be able to comment on later, is I think we have total control over, as the quote-unquote landlord of the public right-of-way, we have more control over that on a day-to-day basis or year-to-year basis. Whereas once we give approval on private property, as long as they're meeting what we approved, you can't take that back. And so I think there's a distinction there that may work to our favor in expediting these things.
Right. If I could add, one thing that struck me when you mentioned outdoor eating cafes, you already have, outside of your zoning code and in your regular village code, a fairly extensive section that regulates outdoor eating cafes, that sets forth requirements for those cafes, including something that you were alluding to, Trustee, in that if they are on public right-of-way, there has to be some sort of lease or license agreement with the village, which is what we did for the temporary use at Choo Choo, where we're imposing upon them certain requirements so that we can control aspects of that outdoor dining.
Also deal with the liability issues.
Exactly.
That are on our property.
But there's limitations on hours, you know, how far into the right-of-way they can extend, how much public sidewalk they need to leave. So you already have sort of a set of controls, you know, in place for outdoor eating cafes, even if you weren't to make it a special use.
Okay, so we'll ask the Plan Commission to take a look at that then at their earliest possible opportunity. Thank you, trustees. Next up is just...
Before you continue, would it be advisable for the board to attach a return date to the Plan Commission, just so that it does get moved along?
November.
Sure, absolutely.
So that is something that you can consider, is that you can direct the Plan Commission to conduct whatever hearings they need to do so, so that something can come back to you within a reasonable time.
So what do you think would be an appropriate time? One meeting or two meetings?
Probably 2 meetings.
So that would be June and July, so report back to us in August?
August or September at the latest.
How about August 1st? That gives them 2 meetings.
Or the first meeting in August?
First meeting in August. Okay, first meeting in August. Okay. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Okay, next is new business. Did anyone have anything else they would like to discuss?
I do. I would like to, at the last meeting, I discussed the fee for small projects. And through the last couple of weeks, I've spent a couple of opportunities talking to Peter about small projects and how we can get the cost down, and we kind of came up with that cost of $250 last time, and whether we can actually do a variance project that's less than $5,000 for $250. And we've have a lot of good ideas have come out of what we've talked about. We actually got a fence variance application from another village that is actually, you know, very well thought out. It makes the resident bring forth all these documents. They make the copies. You know, I was thinking about, you know, certified mail. If you have to deliver 25 to 30 letters within 250, is it, you know, you have to send it certified, which is $6 a piece. You have to pay Patty, you know, an hourly wage to put it on. By the time you add all that cost up, you can send an employee out to drop them off and probably save half of it, or more. I mean, as long as they get delivered and it's certified that they've been delivered, so that employee would have to fill out a sheet that says it's, was delivered. So I think there's a lot of ways in the place that we could, we have in our zoning that we can have a zoning administrator. So for small projects, they can, they can go in front of Peter. He could be the zoning administrator. If we don't want it to go in front of the whole zoning board of appeals, the zoning administrator can make a recommendation, send it down to this board. If it goes in front of the zoning board of appeals, we don't have to have a verbatim minutes. We can have just the regular minutes, and then our village attorney Mars sends us down a findings of fact, very similar to a law brief. I mean, you can get a brief of a court case without having to sit in the courtroom for 5 days. So there's ways we can make this quicker and less costly and less time consuming for our residents. So what I would like to do is, we do have a resident that has been patiently waiting now 6 months to come in front of the ZBA, just to get a hearing about a fence. I mean, in dog years, her dogs are 3.5 years older than they were when she started this process. So, I would like us to at least allow her to start the process because I think we have the right to reduce the cost to $250 for this particular thing. I would like for us to allow her to start the process for $250, with the understanding that this is being worked on. I think we can make this work at $250, and we should have this probably done and ready to look at, and probably within the next meeting, I would assume.
Did the Plan Commission look at it last night, Tuesday night?
No. What Trustee Ballerine is suggesting is, rather than having the Plan Commission review the fee that is associated with an application, the village board, because the fee is part of the village code, is not required to send the matter to the Plan Commission to conduct a public hearing to discuss the fee. You have the discretion to make a change to that fee structure. I would like to note that the total staff, because what we did is I did work with Bob and Patty to come up with what is our actual total cost, and we used the last variance request that we just completed as an example. Without the attorney fees, the total staff cost was $1,220. Of that, $544 were for the verbatim minutes, and $174 were for the certified mail. If the board were to consider a reduction in that fee, I would probably recommend that reduction be closer to $500 to recoup our actual costs, provided the board decides to eliminate the verbatim minute requirement and the certified mail. In discussing the matter with the village attorneys, there's nothing that requires us to have the verbatim minutes. That's just an additional step that the village has chosen to implement in the process. The board could enact where the meeting is taped, and if in the event that there is an appeal, then we can then have those minutes transcribed into verbatim minutes for the board to review. So I wanted to throw that out to you guys just so that you guys had those before you move forward.
Can you actually go through the breakdown and give the associated numbers so
Sure.
they have an idea?
The public notice was $231. The verbatim minutes, which is the court reporter, was $544. The certified mailing, which was to 29 households at $6 per envelope, was $174. If we were able to send it out first-class mail, that $174 cost could be reduced to $13.34. And we had printing costs of about $20. And then staff time came out to about $245. And so there are areas that you can reduce to reduce that application fee that you assess to property owners.
This was for an addition?
This was for the, yes, the addition on Fairbank.
Okay. Which was a fairly lengthy, complicated.
Correct.
Process. We're talking about a much less expensive.
Right.
And in that situation, you know, we all know that that person didn't really do a lot of due diligence in preparing a plan. What sort of items did this other village require the resident to bring in to accompany the form?
It's funny you should ask. I have a copy already. A lot of survey, site plan, the project zoning analysis, proof of ownership, application fee. Then they had to make 10 copies of all of it, along with everything, so it gets handed off to the zoning. So there's no copies been done. A pretty lengthy questionnaire about fence height, why you're asking for the variance, what's the reasoning for the variance, what zoning ordinance. Do you believe this will do you believe the requested fence will have any adverse effect on adjoining property owners? It's pretty detailed.
Photographs of the property?
Yeah. So I think it's pretty well done. I mean, we would have to take this and modify it to tweak it to work with Riverside. But like I say, I think we can get this done for a much less fee. And I think even the fees that you laid out there was for a fairly complicated project. So I mean, I'd like to keep this closer to $250.
If the applicant was required to present all this, would that reduce staff time because staff is not doing copying and things like that?
Yes. It would reduce the staff time and the copy cost.
The staff time is only it's not the lawyer's staff time, it's just your staff time.
It's Bob and Patty's time.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I understand that something like a fence isn't as costly to the homeowner as an addition, yet I'm not convinced that that should be the criterion for determining how much the variation cost or what should be required. I think that we have zoning laws or zoning regulations because we believe that we believe certain things in this village. We believe you should have an unimpeded view, for instance, as you look up and down the street, or we believe that you shouldn't be able to build something that's an obstacle, whatever, however you define that. But we don't set zoning laws based on how much something costs. We have zoning laws because we think that construction, that building, that how people look at the village should fit within how the zoning code looks at the village, and that's not necessarily a function of cost. So I have a hard time saying because of you could have something that doesn't cost very much, but which you really wouldn't want to have exist. I'm not convinced that because I don't even want to talk about a fence because that doesn't seem fair to the petitioner, but something that doesn't cost a lot, Trustee Foley, just because it doesn't cost a lot to do doesn't mean it's not an important topic and shouldn't warrant the same due diligence as something that costs a lot. So I frankly while I understand that a fence might cost $2,000 and this might cost $1,000, that doesn't make the fence any less important to our zoning, to the effect on the community than anything else. In fact, I could make the opposite argument that some of the additions that require zoning are really not affecting anybody as much as a fence where you can see the fence looking down the street. So let me finish, Joe. So I am not certain. I understand what you're saying, but I'm not convinced that that's the appropriate response. And I have a couple of other concerns. I think that the minutes don't always reflect, but I found it very difficult to understand what went on at not Tuesday night's Plan Commission, but at the previous Plan Commission because there weren't verbatim notes taken. The minutes didn't tell me about the discussion at the zoning board at all. I had no clue what the commissioners thought. It wasn't possible to figure it out, and I don't expect. I can't remember who wrote up. Well, I guess it was the woman who was recording it wrote up the minutes, but the minutes did not tell me why people made the decisions. And so I had nothing to go on, and I feel frequently when that happens, even when we do have the verbatim minutes, we're recreating the decision-making process. And it concerns me a little that if we don't have the verbatim minutes, then we're recreating the whole Zoning Board of Appeals process because we don't understand the decision-making. Now, you know, you could remedy that perhaps by requiring that the chair come to a board meeting and explain it. Or you could remedy it by requiring that the commissioners summarize their point of view. And I know, Mr. Mars, we've talked about that before. And frequently you have to actually interpolate what went on. And I don't think that that serves the community, and it certainly doesn't serve us. So I do have some concerns, Trustee Ballerina, about what you're proposing. I personally would agree that we don't need to have certified mail. I would hate to have, I don't think it's really fair to say I wouldn't like us to compare it to staff time because our staff doesn't have time to do it. I would much rather that we paid a little bit more money than we had our building inspector go around and deliver mail. That doesn't seem like a very good use of time. But I guess I am not convinced, I'll put it this way, I'm not convinced about lowering the fee, and I disagree with the verbatim minutes at this point.
We don't have verbatim minutes at this meeting.
Yeah, but after this, but the difference is that we vote on affirming or negating the vote of another commission without anything to go on if we don't have verbatim minutes. There was no way from those last set of minutes to understand the decision-making process of the Zoning Board of Appeals, or the Plan Commission also at the last one. And whereas the difference here is that we are the ultimate body. If somebody wants to, nobody else is going to be using our information at a next meeting to vote. It is true that somebody might want to look at the taping of it or watch us on TV to thoroughly understand it. But we need, in my opinion, we need the minutes because we're basing our vote not only on how we interpret what is being requested, but also based on an understanding of how the Zoning Board of Appeals commissioners voted. And we don't have that unless we have the verbatim minutes because the minutes don't reflect it. And so we're having, in effect, 2 Zoning Board of Appeals meetings.
May I ask just one clarifying question from the attorneys? Is certified mail required?
That's an excellent question. In the zoning code, it's very poorly written. And in a technical sense...
In the Illinois Municipal Code.
Illinois Municipal. And in a technical sense, you can say it's not, because the provision that requires either first of all, it doesn't require certified mailing. It's either hand delivery or certified mail. So you can have somebody deliver it and sign an affidavit, you know, a little thing that it was hand delivered, and that would be adequate. And your current code requires either. In the Illinois Municipal Code, in the zoning provision, Article 13, it doesn't say what communities under 500,000 are supposed to do with providing notice for variations. Special uses require this either hand delivery or a certified mailing. Now, the hand delivery or certified mailing, according to the municipal code, applies to municipalities of 500,000 or more. In other words, Chicago. And it doesn't say what happens in smaller communities. Now, normally, smaller non-home rule communities always have at least as onerous a regulation as the higher ones, or more onerous. In this case, if it just doesn't say it, so you could read it as if you're under 500,000, there is no requirement for your variations. Probably not a real conservative approach, which is why your code does require the either hand delivery or the certified mailing, but it's this weird area. The Illinois Municipal League, on a couple of occasions, has asked that the legislature kind of clarify what's happening here. So that's the answer. It's not real clear. What you could do, though, is if you did move the fence variation process outside of the zoning code, and I know the Plan Commission didn't want to do that, but if you did, you could put any regulations you wanted that would mirror what was in the zoning code, but also ameliorate those as needed. So you could provide for first-class mail for the notices, for example. So that's...
But I assume that the underlying intent of either certified mail or hand delivery is to ensure that the people most impacted by the variation have due notice so that they can make comments if they wish to.
There are due process issues if you make it too lenient. You know, say you could reach a point where someone could say, as a neighbor within a near proximity, this had an effect on my property values, and I did not have adequate notice to participate in this quasi-judicial process in anything resembling a meaningful way. So at some point, it could be too watered down.
Thank you. Mr. Pollock?
Yeah, a couple of side notes, and then I want to kind of make a more general statement. One is, I think, based on what I just heard from the village attorney, I would say that we should take the position that certified mailing is not required by the Illinois statutes, and we should amend our code to eliminate the requirement for certified mailing. I think if we surveyed other communities, we'd find out that very few, if any of them, send public notices out by certified mail. So I think the practice in most municipalities, my guess, I've never done a survey, but that's based on my experience. I suspect it's not being done by certified mail. It was mentioned moving the fence regulations outside the zoning. I don't think I would ever want to do that. I don't think I would support that. But again, that's a side note. What I did want to say, though, was, when this first came up, I was thinking that, well, it makes sense that whatever our costs are, the applicant should pay for those. And that's where our $1,000 fee comes from. But I think, well, I know that Trustee Ballerine has made a good case for the fairness of that. And I've come around to think that that it is unfair to require such a large fee. But my thinking is based on if you have a legitimate variation, in other words, you got a true case of hardship where there's something unique about this property that prevents them from complying with the code and making reasonable use of their property, they've got a true hardship, a true need for variation. We ought to make it easy for someone to apply for that variation and go through the process. And a $1,000 fee for, a $2,000 fence or whatever isn't making that easy, accessible. But I want to emphasize, though, that a legitimate variation, I don't want anyone to interpret, if we do end up reducing the fee, I don't want anyone to think we're suddenly opening the door for variations. I'm going to continue, I will take a hard line on variations. I will insist that they meet the standards for hardship and unique conditions and all the other standards for variation. But if someone's got a legitimate need for a variation, we need to hear them. We need to make it easy for them to come before us. Now, we can't cipher out those who don't have a legitimate variation and those that do. We're going to have the same fee for both. But the way we send out the message that don't bother asking for silly variations is by turning one down, or turning those types of variations down, making sure that we're reviewing variations on the correct standards. So I guess I would be open to this idea of reducing it. I know we can't take action tonight, but anyway, I just wanted to get my case out there, my thinking out there.
And I think, when you're talking about making the process easier, it doesn't mean making the approval easier,
Exactly.
Gene. I mean, there would still be a review process. So I agree, we don't want to just make it so that people can get a rubber stamp of approval on these things. But to make the process easier just makes it available to people that they can think there is a process there. When it's $1,000 for a $2,000 fence, you kind of remove that ability, and then I think you just frustrate people that they can't do what they want with their property. So I want to make it so that they do have that option to at least have a review. I would ask Peter if you could look into maybe what some other communities do as far as like what Doug said with that. A suggestion that just comes to my mind is, do we ever use interns here? I'm sure there are people that would love to be interns.
Yes.
That would be a perfect job for an intern to go deliver these things, and there would be no cost associated. A non-paid internship, I'm sure, the colleges would love to put someone here. And the other thing is, with the minutes, is there some technology now with everything that we have that we don't have to have a stenographer sitting there? Is there not some type of dragon speak or something that other organizations use for these meetings? that would allow it to be done cheaper? I don't know, but I'm just wondering if we could ask.
There is technology, voice recognition, that does create written words based on
Right.
spoken. I haven't seen any that actually transcripts. It's a little different because you have to identify
Who's saying?
the speakers.
Right.
I haven't. You would just get a mass of words
Right.
that someone would have to spend, I think, a fair amount of time cleaning up so it would be intelligible to you all and trying to recreate kind of what
Right.
happened.
But maybe if you could just ask what other ones do for this.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing with the court reporter is that the reporter, once they submit it, they sign off on it. So that's.
Right.
You know, certainly you can with, like Michael can do more with creating draft findings that can include, you know, the basis that the people voted. If you know going forward that's the way it's going to be. I mean, we do that for a community we work together on now where they don't have for any of the variations, they have nothing there. And essentially I take my own notes and we turn it into, and we try to explain for the elected officials kind of what the testimony was in summary fashion from each witness, what questions were asked, and then down the line, why the vote. Not only what the vote was, but kind of what the thinking was.
Exactly, and if we could have a template for these committees as to you need to fill this out with your minutes so that you can tell what the process was and not just.
Yeah, there is a way to do that. I mean, Michael does a good job with that now.
Right, he does, but you know, it's a question then of what the real difference in cost would be, because for Mr. Mars to do it, there's a cost involved for us too. So it's not really true that we would be quote unquote saving $544, Michael, because your time is worth something.
No, I'm thinking with the committee to give it to them, if we could just give them a template that they fill out for minutes.
We've asked for it.
It's not
a template, but we've literally asked commissioners to state why they vote, and they won't do it.
But if we give them a form that they need to fill in as part of turning in their minutes.
You can try. Certainly, it's a good
worth
idea,
trying.
Pat. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But can you say a little bit more about, we've asked for this kind of specificity.
I've said that in order for the trustees to understand the commission's point of view, there has to be a finding of facts based, that not just is Mr. Mars does an excellent job of trying to explain the overall point of view of a commission, but that's different than understanding the solitary no vote when that person refuses to say why he or she voted in a certain way. And that has happened. And that's a great concern to me. And frankly, it's a concern to me that, not that I don't believe that you do a good job of explaining people's votes, but I don't believe that your role is to interpret the votes or the conversations that go on at a commission meeting. I would prefer to see actually the verbatim minutes than to think that somebody's shortening the conversation. That's just my point of view. I understand what you're saying, Pat. But if people want to fill out the form, but in fact, when commissioners have been asked, by me at least, to say, excuse me, it's going to be really hard for me to come back to the Board of Trustees and explain your vote. It's probably my charming personality, but I still don't get results. You don't have to laugh, Mr. President.
I think that's something that the chairpersons of our committees need to be kind of given some training.
But even so, I agree, but even so, it's rough. These are voluntary organizations. To have a voluntary president or chair of a board say, you know what, Joe Ballerine, I still need you to tell me why the heck you voted that way. It's just not going to happen. Or you didn't fill out your form. It's just not, I mean, we've all been involved with it. That's my personal point of view. It may not be true. I'm not saying it's not worth it, Pat. I'm just telling you, I personally
No, I'm just trying to
prefer.
think of what would.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great suggestion. I'm just saying that when asked, and maybe it would work better if it were more of a silent filling out of a form. I don't know, but it certainly doesn't work when somebody says, can you help me understand your point of view?
If I may, I think it's very reasonable for us to expect that people that serve on our committees, I know they're volunteers, but it's reasonable to expect that when they vote on something, that they explain why they vote on it.
I agree. I agree with you.
If they don't, we have a problem that we need to address. I think based on the few committees that I know that we have, I can't imagine that someone's going, if a chairman politely says, would you like to explain why you voted no on that? I can't imagine anyone ever saying no.
It happens.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's
maybe
always going to
does,
happen.
but-
That's not fair because there are always exceptions.
Yeah, but, you know, it's a public meeting. It's, I mean, as a matter of law, I would think they're obligated to explain why they're voting the way they are.
They're not. We've had this
Not
conversation.
really.
I've asked.
Really?
Yeah.
I
They're
mean,
not, and it puts
that's
Mr. Mars in a
kind of
very
separate
awkward
issue.
position.
It's sort of one thing to capture what some people usually do say.
Yeah.
You know why? But if somebody actually refuses, I mean, what they're there for is for their vote, and then what you all do is, does the record support the vote? Sometimes it can be helpful when somebody might have some things to say that no one else realized, but technically it's not required. It's the vote that's required.
And I actually think there are two conversations going on right now. One is what are the requirements that we want to have and put in place, and the second is how much are we going to ask the petitioner to pay for? There are two different things. So let's just say that we decide no, we need the verbatim notes. By law, we decide we have to do. Let's just say nothing changes. We want to have all the information we have. That's one question. The second question is, well, who covers those costs?
Well, the other thing is we're talking about two different scopes of projects. Okay, a less than 5,000 or less than 4,000, less than 3,500. I don't whatever number we put on it. Project does not take the same amount of thought process as a two-story addition or addition on a house. It's just a different process.
I'm sorry, Jim. Yeah.
So we can go with a shorter type of calendar where when the letter is sent out to the people for the 250 radius, they're given 10 days to write an opinion on why they believe this is good or bad idea. They will get all the information, they write an opinion. That's what this does. It goes to the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator then attaches that to the application, reads it, and makes a decision based on what the information that he's given on whether it's a good or a bad idea. And then it goes to the village board. For this type of function, for this type of small application, I don't have any problem that it doesn't go to the zoning board of appeals. I have all the faith in the world that our zoning administrator could be our village manager and our building inspector. And they can make a decision, or not a decision, a recommendation to this board. And then you would be given a packet that would give you pictures, application, address, any comments that came in over the next 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever. You would have a packet. You would be able to read it, find out if there was objections. You would have a detailed finding of fact from our zoning administrator, which would be I would assume, our village manager, and then we make the decision from there. I mean, we're talking about a small project. So I just want to make sure that we're talking that, and it's not, and I don't want you to think that this is a way for us to have, you know, closed off vistas and more fences or garages or all kinds. This is just the process that opens the door to people that can give them the opportunity. All I want to do is give them the opportunity to come, to have a say and a chance to make their case. Doesn't mean we're going to approve it. It doesn't mean that Peter's going to approve it. It just gives them the opportunity to come to do it. And if you give people the opportunity, I would assume that they would take that opportunity rather than just doing it. Because right now we have that problem too. You know, there's things that go up in this town that just go up because there's you know, I'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. So I mean, if you give them a reasonable process to do it and give them a fair hearing, then that process will be used and utilized, and I think we can solve ourselves two problems. Not only that problem, but the problem of people just doing whatever they want, whenever they want, because, you know, that quite frankly is done also in this town. So that's why I think this is important. Mr. Fowler.
First, I want to agree with Gene, because I know your feelings deep down about variances and why they are what they are. And I agree with that. And I agree with Doug. I don't want this to seem like we're opening the floodgates to this, but I think from a homeowner's standpoint, the variance process is a daunting process. And if we require the homeowner to come to us prepared, and let's not talk about a fence, let's talk about an addition, for instance. The homeowner goes through the expense of hiring an architect, possibly an engineer, spending thousands and thousands of dollars to prepare drawings, only to gamble with a variance, whether they're approved or not. Possibly a legal description is needed of the property. There's an additional cost to the homeowner, a current survey. There's another additional cost, any engineering that's involved, hydrologists, whatever, testing of soils. I think that the costs add up. And I think if we look at this, I want to make the variance stick. I believe that in Doug's case, there should be a true hardship to it. I want to make it affordable because in some instances, I think people are reluctant to improve their property because they're afraid of the variance. Not only the cost, but the process of it. The time it takes, i.e., how many months this woman has been waiting. So I think my opinion is that it is much more than a cost. I think the whole process in general, I think there's certain things that we need to demand. This list that this other community is requiring is something to take a look at and tweak. But I think that the homeowner endures quite a bit of cost, way more than we do as a village, in preparing themselves for a variance. That's my opinion.
I guess I don't disagree with you, but I think the homeowner should.
Oh, absolutely.
We have a zoning code because we believe in our zoning code, and I don't believe that it should be easy to apply to apply for variations. And perhaps I wasn't clear, Joe, when I said I don't think the criteria for what the process should be or what the cost should be should necessarily be how much the project costs. I think that we have a zoning variation procedure not because of the cost of the project, but because of the potential effect on the community. And as I said earlier, a fence can have just as much an effect on the neighborhood as as an expensive addition. And to say, therefore, it shouldn't have the same process or merit the same scrutiny as an addition begs the question of why you have a zoning code, and I disagree. I'm sorry that a fence costs $2,000 and a variation procedure costs the same amount, perhaps for an expensive home, expensive addition as for a fence. But we really have a zoning code because of the impact on the community, not because of the cost to the petitioner. And I think that that's not. I don't think that's the way we should be looking at granting variations. I think we need to grant, I think that there's an inherent unfairness in saying that some variations have less merit for scrutiny than others. You may say that it's a monetary unfairness. I think it's treating variations differently without a priori knowing the potential effect on the community is where you're setting up an unfairness to the community. And I don't think that it's fair for us to make an assumption before the fact about the potential impact of a petition. And I just think that does the community a huge disservice as a whole. And I think that not only should we be concerned about the individual petitioner, but our responsibility is to be concerned about our community as a whole. And I haven't heard a good reason for making a lower cost variation process any different than a higher cost one without knowing what the impact is on the community. And you won't know that until you hear the variation. And we have a zoning code because we want to protect the zoning in this village. And it's not for me about making it easier or less easy depending on the project. It's about preserving the community and treating everybody equally, regardless of what their a priori sense of the importance of the project is. That's not for us to determine or for the petitioner to determine before the fact. I think that's really basically an unfair way to look at everybody be coming before whatever board we decide they're going to come before, or anybody doing a petition. You can't do it before you have the facts, and that's what you're requiring, what you're asking for. You don't know the impact of the fence before you see that impact. And it has to be taken as seriously, I believe, as any other potential change or variation. And I haven't heard, I'm trying very hard because I understand a $2,000 project and the $1,000 variation cost. I understand that, 50% versus, $100,000 addition. But I'm not convinced that, I think for me at least, it's the wrong sense of fairness. I'm thinking about what's fair to the community.
And I am too. I'm thinking what's fair to the residents, and a less onerous process where at least they get a hearing is fairer than the process that they have to go through now. So I will go back to what I started and ask for a consensus of this board on whether that we can reduce the fee in this one case to $250, allow her to start her process while we put the finishing touches on this. And if we don't agree with this, the worst case scenario, what we've done is we allowed a resident to go through the process for $250 rather than $1,000. That's the worst case scenario. I mean, I just looked at the lawyer bills for a process, and it goes exactly to what Mike Foley said, Trustee Foley said, sorry. This person came in front of us with absolutely no information. I mean, nothing but a plot of survey on a 24 by 24 square, and got through ZBA, and they approved it, and it got to us. And the lawyer fees were like $1,600, $1,700. That was just the lawyer fees. So we're subsidizing things every day, which we need to, that's what our broader picture needs to do. And I think we need to do that. But in this case, this has been going on for 6.5 months. I think we should allow this process to at least go through, allow her to at least get a fair hearing, and then we can come back and make our decision, but we shouldn't hold this resident up any farther.
We're not preventing her from getting a fair hearing.
We are.
No, we're not. She could choose to pay the dollar. She has every right to get a fair hearing. She's chosen that she doesn't want to follow the process. To just say we're preventing her from getting a fair hearing is not a fair statement. We're not preventing her.
$1,000 for $3,000
We're not preventing
is not
her
fair.
from doing anything.
That to me is not fair. So I have asked for consensus. So what I would like to do is, I don't know how we do this, but do it in less than 4 months.
So let me make an attempt here, because we need a little bit more meat on those bones other than just the $250. I think that everyone agrees that and let's first be clear that we're talking about fences. I don't want to conflate other projects first. Tonight we're talking about fence variations. I completely agree that a determination on a fence is as serious and deserves as serious a hearing as a project of a much larger magnitude. I completely agree with that, and I think most people agree with that. To Trustee Collins' point, the cost of the process, though, isn't necessarily related to the determination of the variation. So as long as we maintain the integrity of the process, the integrity of the hearing, then I think that your concern is answered, that we're treating everything seriously. The idea that kind of got thrown out about a zoning administrator, I think that at this point that muddies the waters. I think
I didn't hear that.
For the zoning administrator idea, I think that muddies the waters at this point. I think if we're moving forward to considering an alternative situation for fences at this point, to your point again, it serves us better to keep the ZBA review process, to keep the formal hearing for the fence before the Zoning Board of Appeals. I am okay with the idea of experimenting with the hand delivery, but I think that the due process issue is critical. I think we have to make sure that people that are potentially impacted by this process have a chance to be heard.
It's our understanding that Rob has been doing that, certainly with respect to, I guess, in the business district or where things are real close together. He's been doing some hand delivery already. save the money.
So we can try that. And with regard to, because one of my concerns about the verbatim minutes is I've had the same difficulty that you mentioned at times, because one of the things that the Board of Trustees has to do when we're reviewing what the commission sent to us is we have to make sure that they are addressing the relevant standards and what their reason. It's not their vote so much. It's what their reasoning is with regard to the various standards for the variation. So it seems to me that one thing that we could request, if that's the right word, is that we need from our commissions, both from the plan and from the ZBA, we need them to make clear what their consideration of these various standards are. So if we do those things, we maintain the integrity of the process, we maintain the seriousness of the review. With regard to the cost, really the only cost that we would be talking about would be the public notice. Because we're not having the verbatim minutes, we're not doing the certified mailing. I mean, there would be some costs associated with the hand delivery, and that cost actually is approximately $250. So I would, if we're going to have a consensus on this point, I would like it to be within those confines, that we're only talking about fencing, that we're keeping the ZBA review, that we're going to have hand delivery as an experiment to make sure that this works. So if that is amenable to the trustees, I think that gives enough clarity. Lance and Mike, I mean,
yeah,
does that get there?
What it would be, right, the fee would be altered. That's not in your zoning code. These other requirements are not actually in your code, the current, so those would be handled administratively, like do hand delivery, we won't have a court reporter there. Those are not dictated by the code, so I was just confirming. So that's fine.
So, trustees, what do you think about that?
I have a question. Peter, if it's not in the downtown area, for Bob to go hand to hand, house by house and get a signature, does he have time to do that?
Well, no. What it would be is he would sign an affidavit.
He doesn't need to get a signature.
Right.
So does he have time, though, to go and hand deliver this?
Well, it's not probably the most cost-effective
I
use
think
of his
that's
time, but
we have summer seasonals.
Yeah, it's not my anticipation that we're going to have our building director hand delivering notices.
Who would be doing it?
I would probably look at either one of the Public Works seasonals, or one of the things that moving forward I'm hoping to implement is as Trustee Collins referred to, a intern program here, and the intern would be the one that would be delivering the notices.
Okay, so it's $231. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
The $231, that's the public notice that we put in the paper.
So that we can't do.
The delivery is what then?
For this particular thing, I mean, because we're only talking about one thing, I'll go deliver them, and I'll come and sign the affidavit.
That's
so we don't.
I don't think.
Why don't we send them out by first-class mail?
Yeah, why don't we just mail
Because
them out?
Because the problem with first-class mail.
Your current zoning code says.
Yeah, you would need to do. You have to do a text amendment.
Let's do that.
Well, my issue with the first-class mail is we need, because what the situation we don't want to have happen is go through the process and then have somebody come in at the 12th hour and say, I never got it.
Right.
I'm confused. What are we talking about? This one instance right now, and all Joe is asking for $250?
No, we're talking about in terms of fence variations. Fence variations only at this point.
I thought Joe was asking for just this one case.
No, this is fence variations only. The process would be a $250 application fee. It would be the notice we would have public notice and the landmark. We would have hand delivery to the relevant properties. We would have the regular hearing before the ZBA, as always. The ZBA would be asked to provide detailed comments as to the relevant standards for the variation, and then it would come to us for final approval. Am I correct about that?
Let me ask the village attorney this, your opinion on this. If someone says they didn't get notice, are we in a better position if we say, hey, our staff hand delivered that, versus, hey, here's evidence that we sent this via first-class mail?
Well, the law, I mean, it may sound somewhat counterintuitive, but the law takes hand delivery, like service of summons, more seriously than first-class mail that hasn't been returned.
But is that when it's delivered person to person, or if it's just dropped in someone's, you can't put it in a mailbox?
I understand, it's like
By law, you can't put it in the
summons,
mailbox.
but, yeah, I mean, the real problem is, in order to do that, you have to do, that would require a text amendment to make that change. And then between those two, you know, are there due process concerns with first-class mail? Probably not.
Well, and do we not put a sign on the property as well?
No, we do not.
We do not. Well, maybe we add that to the mix.
Yeah,
But again, I don't want to conflate things too much, because right now our code allows either certified mail or hand delivery.
Right.
That at this meeting, our choice is between those two things. Now, so I would like to try to reach a consensus on this before I say what I'm going to say next that isn't fence related. So, with regard to the fence variations, are we willing to give this process a try?
I'm not. We just
Okay, so
let
no?
the last meeting said that we were giving it to the Plan Commission to determine, and now we're doing it tonight?
No, well, first of all, I don't think we could do anything tonight.
No, it would have to appear, you could reach a consensus
We could
tonight.
reach a
It would have
consensus,
to,
okay.
but it wouldn't be final action. It would have to appear on your consent agenda next time.
But didn't we just ask the Plan Commission at the last meeting to look at this? And isn't it?
No, I think we asked staff to look
we
at
asked-
reducing the costs.
Right.
This isn't the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission, the fees.
Sure it is. Amendments to the
fees?
zoning court? Absolutely.
Well,
That's
the
what they
certified
do.
mail issue, maybe.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about changing the fence.
No, the only
I'm-
thing that we're talking about tonight is, it really goes to the fee. And the fee is not a change to the zoning code, because the fees are not within the zoning code.
But you're also talking about not having the verbatim minutes
But
and changing the
Those, yeah,
delivery.
but those aren't required by the
to
zoning
the attorney's
code.
point,
That's
those,
just
Oh, I see.
currently
Okay.
right,
how
those
staff
are
is
just
handled.
all just procedural issues.
To try to, in the spirit of trying to wrap this up, my position would be that I am prepared to reduce the fee for all residential variations to $250, period.
Is it smart to talk about, because I'm a little concerned that we get away from us, we start with fences and all of a sudden, a month from now, we're talking about garden sheds.
Well, and, okay, all right, so since we don't have a consensus yet, I'll say what I was going to say next. As I told you, I've been going around talking to the various commissions about this commission review process. One of the things that I've heard from both the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Plan Commission is they feel like that the people that are coming before them need better information, that they need better guidance as to what is required by the applicant and how to present the matter before them. So we also have a situation that Trustee Ballerine mentioned with regard to one variation where, yes, we had a $1,000 fee involved that primarily has gone to staff time, verbatim minutes, that kind of thing, but then we spent $1,600 of attorney's fees. I think if we want to take a broader look at the cost and procedures with regard to variations in general, that is something that should go through the commission process. That is something that we should send to the zoning board and get their input and the staff as to cost. That, to me, is a separate, bigger, global issue. What Trustee Ballerine is presenting is a very finite issue with regard to fencing variations only. And it seems to me that if we want to have that future discussion about different ways of handling larger projects, this is a good test run to see how this kind of procedure might work. We have a template that we can start to use about the fence variation, and so we can learn a lot in a microcosm before we go to the macrocosm. So it seems to me the more prudent thing would be to give it a try with regard to the fence variation. And then if we want in the future to look more broadly at the variation process itself and the cost involved and the procedure, that to me is a separate discussion.
Could we limit it to this fence variation?
That's-
Instead of saying all fence variations, could we just make?
Yes, you can. You can decide to waive the $1,000 and have it $250 for this particular applicant and direct staff to use this modified procedure.
Because I think that we're looking at reinventing some of this process, and maybe it needs to be looked at a little bit before we do it tonight.
Sure.
But certainly this person has waited long enough for this decision.
If you want to...
And it can be used as a sample case of, well, how does it work if we only do this? What are our actual...
You may certainly do that.
I would be more comfortable with that.
So are you waiting for a motion then for this?
Well, there's not really a motion. It's just, at this point, it's a
Yeah,
consensus.
be consensus, because this isn't on the agenda.
Yeah, so we can't take official action. What we can do is have a consensus that among the trustees that you want to reduce for this particular application, reduce the fee to $250 with the various procedural changes we've outlined. And then we can put it on the consent agenda for the next meeting.
I agree with that. I think for this particular situation, this is a good idea, and it is, again, maybe it's a microcosm of a microcosm. It gives us an opportunity to see really how the system is going to work. So I would agree taking the smaller view than the broader.
Mr. Foley?
I'm not in favor.
Just waiving it for this one petition?
To use this as a sample.
Who's going to do, what
Because then you go
expect
through
to
the
learn
process
from
and
it?
you see at the end, okay, was it okay to do it without the minutes? Did this work, or did this not work for us? So we're just using one sample case.
I would not be in favor of doing it for one. I just think that looks bad to say and just because they chose not to file yet because of the fee. I'm all in favor of reducing the fee.
And one sample doesn't
but I
tell
just
you
don't
whether the
see-
change in process is going to work.
Right.
That's my view. One sample doesn't tell you anything.
And I think
about it.
But it's a first
Okay.
step in that direction. But
So-
anyway, you don't
Yeah.
need to.
Okay, so am I...
Is this an argument about saving money or adhering to the variance?
No, this is an argument about
Okay,
the
but-
process for change, for
Okay.
why, you know.
So do we have three that wish to do this new process for this case only, and two that don't? So we only need a majority for this particular consensus.
No, you're going to be, well, to waive a fee, it involves money, so you would need 4. You would need to.
Okay, and I vote. I join the consensus to try this process.
Then you have 4.
So we're going to give it a try. Did you want to say something?
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Please.
President Sells and the trustees. My name is Deborah Osworth, and I am the petitioner at 500 Bird Road. Thank you for giving me a minute to say something.
Miss, you can move that mic up.
Okay, it's not so much the fee. That is relevant, but my lot is a legally non-conforming lot. So to break that down, that means that when the house was built, it was legal, but code that has come forth since today has made it not conforming. So my position is that I have a non-conforming lot, and I'm being asked to conform to conforming lot regulations. So I'm not.
Well, and that discussion is exactly the discussion that you'll have
Right.
with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Right. And so from my position, the cost-benefit analysis of doing a very minor improvement is punitive compared to people that don't have that threshold to pass. So I just wanted to bring that for your consideration, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. So is there anything else that anyone would like to
So
talk
can I
about?
just ask, that comes up for a vote then on the consent agenda next time?
Yeah, well,
Well-
it would be, Peter will put it on the consent agenda, but it can always be taken off.
No, I'm just curious.
If somebody wants to vote against it, it could always be taken off.
That's not what I meant. I just meant the next step is then it's on the
Well,
consent
but
agenda.
I would take it, given the split
That's all right.
in the vote, that we would want to put it on the agenda as a separate item so that trustees could have their votes registered. So do we have anything else?
Well, I agree with Doug that this needs to be brought out to a broader. So I would, what do we need to have that discussion? Is that something that should be sent down to the Plan Commission to discuss, or is that something we need to discuss further? But I do agree with what Doug's saying, that this maybe we should start this process of trying to, maybe we wait to see how this works, maybe we don't. But maybe he's right. We should start getting a process in place.
Well, and I would. My point is that I think we should reduce it to 250, even if we make no changes to the verbatim minutes or the how we do mailing notices, etc. I'm comfortable with that. We get 2 of these a year. We're talking. Say we're saving a couple $1,000s a year. But by reducing it, we're making it easier. We're making the process accessible to our residents. It's their zoning code. And they have the right to come before and make an appeal on a reasonable basis. And even if it costs the village money, it's their money. Now, sure, the guy who's not asking for a variation is technically subsidizing the guy who is asking. But anyway, I think you get my point.
Well, and with regard to that, so if what I'm hearing then is really a discussion about the procedure and the cost. So would that best be addressed by the Zoning Board of Appeals in the first instance, or should we just take it on ourselves?
Yeah, certain things you may as well take on yourselves, because these kinds of things, the current practice, if you will, of having a court reporter takes down, none of that appears in your code. It's just how you do things. It's a quasi-judicial process. It is, many communities do have court reporters and do verbatim. And certainly if you ever got in a situation where you were denying a variation on an important project that might be challenged by the property owner, you're really in no legal, you're on firm legal ground whenever you grant anything, because then really it's only a neighbor with standing that could bring the action, and the municipality can't be held liable, although many times they try to throw the municipality, and it's really denying where the risk is. And in those cases, on the larger projects, you might want that verbatim transcript because it preserves the record that supports your decision. But on smaller projects, but my point is, you don't need, the Plan Commission doesn't really deal with that. It's not in your zoning code. The current practice is how staff operates, and that includes the method used to deliver the notices. The alternative is in the code, but there's nothing, the Plan Commission would need to get involved in how staff would direct whether we use the intern or not, for example. So those are really not part of your zoning code, and fees aren't part of your zoning code.
So what I would suggest then is to let this experiment play out, see how this process works, and then once we have that information in hand, we take this on just as a board.
And we had asked Peter to look into what some of the other municipalities do, so maybe that could be brought forward too.
And as part of that, I'd also like to consider finding ways to help our residents in the presentation they make to the Plan Commission and to the Zoning Board, so they have a clear idea of what's expected of them as they go in. So, anything else?
Just one quick point of interest. Being trustee liaison to the Cable Commission, I forgot to tell everybody.
Oh.
Commissioner Gorski and I went to the District 96 board meeting last Tuesday, and Commissioner Gorski made a presentation to the District 96 board to have the Cable Commission televise their school board meetings. There was discussion on change of venue, bringing it over here, whether we shoot it over there or whatever, and they have a lot of inner discussions that they need to make, and we have to come back with a little more proposals. But I'm hopefully, I think their first kind of soundbite was that they were somewhat positive, so I think this would be the next good step for our residents to be more informed of what goes on in our schools, in our township, and our village. So thank you to Commissioner Gorski and the Cable Commission for their constant attempts to continue keeping the residents involved. So thank you.
And to make it official, you are the liaison to the Cable Commission. And what about the summer brochure? That's out now?
It is out. It was. You should have got an e-blast. I think a week ago Monday.
So folks who are interested in the Parks and Recreation Commission programs, that's available online now as well. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Collins, second by Mr. Pollack. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Yes, aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins. Aye. Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.